right, let's get into it.
All right, so today, episode 3, we are going to be talking about double life, aka me living a double life for like 2 years. So, first and foremost, a little housekeeping or whatever you want to call it. My cousin actually informed me that she did not find out about Ryan at Alhambra. It was actually I think it was the night of, I left my phone somewhere in the house, like where I was staying, and she saw it and she saw the text say Ryan, and she thought it was a white guy, and she said, quote, "You give me too much credit if you think I can hold anything overnight." So figured I would start the episode off so I don't forget that. So we gotta, change that little factoid. But anyway, we also wanted to start off this episode with questions that you guys have posted for us thus far. A lot of the questions that we're getting are questions that we will answer in the future. But here were some questions that we can answer in today's podcast. So the first one is, have you guys faced any issues in public? So I'm guessing you're talking about like racism or microaggressions or things like that in public. And if that's the case, kind of. I mean, it was mostly stares. Mm-hmm. Like most of the stares that I would get from like people staring at me, particularly sitting or standing next to Ryan or walking with Ryan, were either by Black women or Chaldean women or Chaldean men. And that's only if they probably heard me talk, because I can pass for white, so I don't really look like I'm Chaldean. But the most of the stares I got were from them. I mean, and I'll elaborate it later.
I mean, from what I can remember, if you weren't black, you were always getting stares with another black dude. With a black guy. If you were like together out at like a mall or walking in certain areas by black women, you would get like looked up and down. I roll a little bit, and I'm definitely used to that, for sure. But I'm a very watchful person, so I'm always observing other people. I'm at tunnel vision when I'm looking at someone or talking to someone. I'm taking in the whole scene, so I notice when people are staring or giving looks. So if you're white or just not black, you're gonna get some looks for sure.
Yeah, and I would say, like, so to elaborate on like the different types of people that we particularly got stares from. When it came to black women, I think it just was a matter of not like it taking one of their own, essentially. Mm-hmm. I passed for white again. And even if I did look Chaldean, I think I probably still would have gotten stares, because there's a pride in there's a lot of black women out there who feel like they can't find good black men, and there is like what's the word I'm looking for? Like there is like a discourse of black women who feel like a lot of good black men date outside of their race, so like outside of their culture or something like that. So it's definitely valid. I mean, I can't totally understand because I'm not a black woman, but I can see where they're coming from, because mm-hmm. it can, as much as I hate on Chaldean men, I mean, I definitely would have, as you guys know, would have loved to have dated a Chaldean man. And when I see Chaldean men, good Chaldean men date like white women or date, outside of their culture, like I'm sure, like I would have kind of felt the same way. Like I would have been like, well, what's wrong with the Chaldean women? Or like, what's wrong with us or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure some Chaldean men feel the same way too. Like as far as like, if a lot of Chaldean women are dating like white men, which we'll get into later on in this episode. This episode is definitely going to touch base on what those 2 years were like between us. So, and of course the stares from the Chaldean women and Chaldean men, it was mostly from like older Chaldean women and men, because I can remember a particular time where His mom was in the hospital for, I cannot remember why. But we went down to the cafeteria. This was a hospital in a predominantly, like a predominantly like cultural diverse neighborhood. And, the woman behind the counter was clearly Chaldean because she was talking on the phone the whole time in Chaldean. No, sorry, in Arabic, actually. And, I'm standing with Ryan, and I guess she could tell that I was Chaldean somehow, maybe the way I was talking or something. And she just gave me an attitude the whole time. Like barely looked at me, barely looked at Ryan. Like it was like we were bothering her. It was like we were interrupting her conversation on the phone, even though she's at work. So, like on a clock. So, like that's like one particular instance that I can think of.
The one that I remember is we were visiting your grandma in the nursing home, and you told that old guy who was there, who always used to talk to you.
Oh gosh, yeah. How could I forget that?
You told the guy you were talking to him, and he wasn't paying me any attention, even though I'm standing like you would stand in like a small.
He's an older Chaldean guy, probably like in his mid-50s.
So like we're standing in like a triangle, and he's just looking at her the whole time. Never looks at me until she says first in English, and then he was like, huh? And then she said it in Arabic to him, and then he looked me up and down and like
said what?
He didn't say anything. He
No. What did I say to him?
Oh, sorry. Said that, this, I think you said this is my fiance, or this is something like that,
because we were engaged.
We were engaged at that time.
Yeah.
But he looked me up and down, and like his whole demeanor just changed from like, I'm so happy to see you type of a thing to like
happy to see me.
Yeah,
Ryan.
Yeah. It was just to like his world had just ended. Like it was the craziest, and then he just like he like shakes me in his hand, says bye, and just walks away. It was I was just like, bro.
He didn't pay attention to me after that.
Jeez,
he was like, okay, she's a whore, essentially.
Yeah.
Like she's a bad girl.
And the one thing I want to just kind of clear up for all of our non-Chaldean and I would say Middle Eastern viewers is the Chaldeans are very, very prideful, and they have a right to be, because I don't know all of the story from their history, but the reason why they're very prideful is because there's not a lot of Chaldeans left, if I'm not mistaken, right?
We definitely have been displaced, killed off, things like that. So it's definitely understandable why like we want to keep it within the culture. I
remember, and we'll get to this later, but I had a conversation with her dad, and her dad was explaining to me about the history and how that when they moved here, the plan was for them to get here, survive, and then multiply, so they could get their population number back up, because it was cut in half, right, over the course of a couple decades.
Something like that. This was obviously like after my family found out, which we will
we'll get that later.
In future episodes.
But just to just clarify like why they have these sorts of why they're like, oh, we gotta keep it all in the community and all that stuff is because they really want to get try to have a bigger community size again, like they had when they were back home, decades and decades ago. But just to give you guys insight, that's all.
So next question is, how did you, Ryan, deal with cultural differences regarding Myrna not being able to tell her family, since you have dealt with this before with an ex?
So before, I never got a chance to meet the family, and I think the family never got a chance to find out about me truly. And this is my ex I'm talking about. So I kind of understood the differences there, and especially when I talked to older people in my family, it was always, oh, like that'll never work out because they just don't like black people.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I definitely do like kind of want to like reiterate for our non-black, non-Chaldean listeners, there is a very troubling history between Chaldeans and Black people. The same way that I think there's like Koreans in LA versus Black people, like whoever mostly owns gas stations, liquor stores, things like that. Which in Michigan, most Chaldeans own gas stations, liquor stores. So there's always like this tension between Chaldean and Black people because Chaldeans don't hire Black people. We just hire our kin or our families to work at the stores, but their customers are predominantly Black. Now, before, I'm not going to lie, I didn't really understand that argument. But now that I went to college and took those like all those like multicultural courses and dated a Black guy and, understood, had these conversations with Ryan's family, that I understand how important representation is. Black people don't feel safe at all. I mean, I'm speaking for Black people. Ryan, you can like interject anytime, but like Black people don't feel safe at all when they are the only Black person in the room. So when you walk into a room and you don't see any Black people, automatically you have to be on the offense. The defense.
I don't think that's necessarily true. If you're coming from a place all your life where your skin color is your community or your culture is your community, then I can see if you're on edge. But I think from the people that are listening, most people that are listening when it comes to Black listeners, it's kind of it's kind of a adaptation at this point in our lives, in our late 20s. It's like, because because like for me, going back to when I first moved to Livonia, I was the only Black kid in my 5th grade class. I was one of 3 Black kids in my 6th grade class. And then it got better in middle school because there's a lot more kids, And then it got a little bit better in high school, believe it or not. But just to go back on what Marina was saying, usually, like if I walk in, and I think we did this, I think we were at a wedding a couple of weeks ago last month where I was the only Black person in the whole wedding. And it sucks when you walk into that situation, but you've already adapted to it. So then you just put on that, I gotta talk like this and do all this stuff for these people.
It's called code switching for those who don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
So, but you can Google that. It's called code switching, and but he wasn't the only Black dude there. We did see a couple other Black people there. So, but it's like, I mean, how did you feel, judging from when you were at the wedding and you thought you were the only Black person to you see a couple more Black people? Do you feel a sense of safety? Like even if it's just a little bit?
I mean, it's not like safety, but it's just like I don't know. It's like like
kind of a relief.
It's that feeling when it's like one of those memes where you and your friend are working the same shift at the restaurant and you're about to have a lot of fun. It's kind of that feeling.
Oh, okay.
Like, man, I'm happy to see you today. Like that. Like just someone who you could look at, and if you're both looking at the same thing, that's funny to you because of your culture and your background. And you can look at them and by off of a look, laugh at the same thing without saying a word. It's that type of feeling.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure you can relate if you have ever been to like a gathering or something like that, and you and your best friend are of the same culture or background, and you can just look at each other and just laugh at something because you guys know exactly what that thing is.
You guys shared an experience,
or
have had a shared experience in your life.
That's the best way to put it. Shared experience is that you kind of just know that this thing is funny if I look at you and laugh a certain way or something like that. So.
Something that would only be funny to like to two people who have a shared experience based on their cultures. Yeah, based on their same culture. And sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, and again, I think it depends on the environment. Like if it's a happy environment,
Yeah, like gathering versus like entering a liquor store. I just. The reason why I bring up the liquor store is because let me preface with this as well. Not every Chaldean person has the same experience, and not every Black person has the same experience. So Ryan's experiences might not be the same as other black people. Like maybe there are black people who do feel like some type of way when they do walk into a store that is in a predominantly black neighborhood and don't see any black employees. The versus like Chaldeans who, what's it called? When I, like when I want to bash on Chaldean men and all that stuff, like, I'm sure there are Chaldean men who are very open-minded. And I know this because I've had Chaldean men reach out to me during this podcast and say like, I'm so happy you're doing this. Like our community needs something like this. So, but like back to what I was saying about like the whole liquor store thing, like I've actually had customers like say like, why don't you guys hire black employees? And I was like, well, it's a family store. And like, we like, what I really want to say is like, we only trust family, but then it's like, you got family stealing from you, like, it's like not my family in particular, but it's just like, why do we only hire family? But later on, as we like became more a part of the neighborhood that we were at, we started having employees like help out with lottery, help out with like bagging, help out with all that stuff. So like, and honestly, like those were probably the best years of the store, like is when we were more inclusive. And like had the customers that have been down for us have been there like all the time, every single day, playing the same lottery numbers, and it like working with us. So,
So to get back off of our tangent.
yeah.
I mean, just in total, I was expecting resistance off the bat, and I knew it was going to be a uphill battle. And at the time, I guess prior to her parents finding out, I didn't quite understand why, they had those biases and just really wanted to stick within their own community of, Chaldeans with Chaldeans or somewhat of that background. But, with her telling her brother and then her cousin, that made me more comfortable with, okay, she's willing to like at least fight and make an effort. But at the time, I was, ignorance is bliss because I didn't know what was coming when it came to those cultural differences. Because, at the end of the day, you're going to have to live with this person. You're going to have kids with this person. And then, how are you going to teach, your half black, half Chaldean kid culture?
Yeah.
Like we're
from both sides,
so and we still don't know because we don't have kids yet, obviously. Right. But at that time, you're just thinking,
oh, we'll make it work.
Yeah, because and for me, everyone that I've met, I'm not to be like bashful or anything like that, but not a lot of people don't end up not liking me for some reason.
Because you have a very calming presence about you, like you're just, and I think the number one thing that I noticed was like, you're just very respectful, but like you literally don't react to even the most ignorant things. Like even in the 6 years that I've known you, like you don't really react to like flat out ignorant stuff. Like I probably seen you react like once or twice, and that was like stuff that involved people saying some ignorant stuff to me, which is like a different story. But you're very calm. You're very calm. You're very collective. You're very intelligent. Like it's just you break the stereotype of what people think black men are, and which I think we need to like talk about. Which we will talk about, like the different stereotypes, based off of Chaldean women, based off of black men and stuff, because especially when in the future episodes when we talk about my family finding out, that's when we're going to talk about stereotypes, because they just brought up stereotypes from the wazoo, so it's like, but anyway, last question that we have is, how did you keep it a secret from your parents? So I think that's a great segue into what this episode is all about. How did I keep it a secret from my parents? Well, The only way that I can answer that is I had to, again, this is my experience only. I'm not saying that this needs to be the blueprint for the people out there who are currently in an interracial relationship that they know that their parents would not accept. But for me, it really helped that my parents could trust me, I guess. Cause like I only lied to them when I was like 16. They found out about a lie, you
Yeah,
know?
like if you're going to this with a shoddy background at telling the truth and sneaking out, you're gonna have a difficult time.
Yeah, and trust me, like when I broke my their trust at that time, like um and again, when I say talk, like I broke my trust with them. I was 16 talking to a Chaldean guy who was 23. So it wasn't more so about trust, it was more so about safety because again, being 16, in the position that I am as far as men, like not, not really understanding that you need to have confidence and respect essentially for yourself to know what you're getting yourself into when you're talking to somebody at that age, and at the same time, what is a 23-year-old doing talking to a 16-year-old? But anyway, besides that, that was the time that I broke my trust with them, and they were, like I said, it's not more so about trust, it's more so about safety. They were really worried about my safety, and that's what essentially they were angry about. I mean, they were angry about me lying, of course, but once I built my trust back up with them, think about it. I'm trying to think, like, I don't think I brought one more guy into the picture, but I was honest about him, so like, I think that kind of built their trust even more. And again, at the time I was getting my master's. So it's like, I wasn't really doing anything wrong. They knew I just go to work, go to school, do homework, hang out with friends. That's about it. So it was easy to lie to them because I had trust with them. It was easy for them to believe the lie because they trusted me. It was not easy lying to them. So I just want to reiterate that because 2 years is a very, very long time to lie to your parents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were things that I couldn't even talk about with them because like in regards to like me and Ryan's relationship or like there were things that have happened in my life that I couldn't even, the one person who's like my sole comforter, like a comfort person, which is Ryan, I couldn't even bring him to, these events. Like when my grandmother died back in 2016, like that was like the worst time of my life. And like Ryan couldn't even come to the funeral, like he couldn't even like, he couldn't be there for me, unless like I was, going over to his house and like we would chill there. So keeping it under wraps was very, very hard. I would try to tell them like every single time I went somewhere, like most of my friends were also in college. So I would say, oh, I'm studying with Rita, or, oh, I'm studying with Sarah, or, oh, I'm studying with this person, or I'm staying over this person's house, or blah, 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 blah. And again, at the time I was old enough to sleep over, like, people's houses. So it's like if me and Ryan had to, it like wanted to hang out like early in the morning the next day, we could see each other or whatever. Because at the time I wasn't like sleeping over your house or anything like that. So because I couldn't, obviously.
Yeah.
But there were times that we wanted to go to like Ann Arbor and stuff, and that's like a long drive. So, and I didn't want to drive home, so I would stay at like Rita's apartment or things like that. So, that's essentially how I can answer that question as far as like, again, keeping secrets and stuff but at this point, so like 2 years into our relationship, there were a lot more people who knew as far as like friends. So again, only family members that knew were my brother and my cousin. And then, again, that one cousin that, saw us, but I didn't know that she knew. So, But as far as friends, like Rita's sister Riva, um, most of Rita's family, because Rita can't. Rita, it's hard for Rita to keep a secret, but but they were mostly supportive. Like Rita didn't tell her parents or anything like that. But Rita's cousins, like all of them were very, very supportive. Who else am I missing?
From like Rita's side,
No, like just friends in general,
I mean,
and your side too.
my side, everybody was, yeah, everyone was supportive. I think, didn't like Rushma say something about dating another Middle Eastern girl?
Oh yeah, so Ryan's friends just told us after
Yeah.
hearing episode 2, they're like, "Oh yeah, we were Reshma and Krista were like, "Oh yeah, we're so sorry, but we actually thought the same thing."
Yeah.
And I was like,
So
"You don't got to be sorry. That's understandable, you
so
know?"
so they said the same thing that my mom said about, dating another another Middle Eastern girl. So, I mean, that's pretty much it though. That's the only thing they really said, and then they actually met Myrna, and they've been on more trips than we have, I think, together.
Yeah, we did like a girls trip to Chicago one time, which
You
is
did
like
that, and then you
was
did the
awesome.
hiking trip.
Hiking, yup. Yeah.
So,
So, but yeah, that's essentially like how most of the people who knew were supportive. And honestly, like we weren't gonna at that point, like we weren't gonna tell anybody who we didn't think was gonna be who wasn't gonna be supportive.
yeah.
I will say this: there were like a couple people in my like in our friendship groups that like that have said things like that, like, "Dude, what are you doing, dating a black guy?" or "What are you doing, dating another Middle Eastern girl?" Things like that. But if I were to look back now, like I know they're coming from like a place of just concern
Mm-hmm.
and not like being judgmental. Like at the time, I probably would have thought that they were being judgmental because they didn't know Ryan. They just heard he's a black guy, but like, now I know it was just like a place of concern. So, I'm trying to think like that's pretty much it. But I did want to touch up upon, like it's 2 years, that me and Ryan are dating, and most of his whole family knows, most of our friends know, nobody in my family knows but two people, essentially, and I mean, there were times like, and I think I brought this up in episode 2 about like, so his mom's perception of me and his sister's perception of me, and how they were just worried about Ryan, because that's their brother, that's their son, like they're not gonna, they saw what he went through, with the previous relationship and how everything had to be under wraps. And they're like literally thinking, why do you want to go through this again? And I guess, I mean, you could take that away, right? Like, why did you want to go through with this again?
It was different because the 2 years we were, it's, we got into this knowing what we wanted out of it, essentially. And we wanted, you know, and I guess knowing what we wanted out of it, I wanted to give Myrna her fair share of time to really think about this is what we wanted to do and this is what we were going to go down, because we knew that, when people found out, especially her family and, her family's friends, it was going to be very, very disruptive and very, very hard. So those 2 years weren't really just like, oh, we can, we'll just chill and get there later. It was kind of building up to make sure that, is this worth it? Is this worth Myrna going through issues? Because, it's going to be mostly Myrna facing all of this stuff when she goes back home and when she has to talk to different people and, and all of that. So you have to, and you kind of have to give her fair share of time to, you know, even though you guys might be in love and this is what you want to do, is this the right thing for her to do? Is like, does she want to sacrifice certain people in her life that might not want this and reject the whole thought of this happening? So for me, it was 2 years of preparation and just making sure we were on the right page every single time. And yeah,
It's
so
definitely where like the foundation came in. You know
yeah,
why that was
so
so important.
so we went into it knowing what we wanted out of it, and it was kind of like a vetting process for 2 years of just making sure we were who we said we were in the beginning, and that we could trust each other. And then I think that process took about a year, especially after I met your brother and your cousin, and then that next year of it being under wraps was me really trying to like get prepared for those next steps for her telling her parents or telling more of her family, or how are we going to get engaged and all this stuff, and all that stuff happening.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah.
it definitely like it helped a lot that I wasn't feeling pressure from both sides, because like even though my family didn't know, I was still feeling pressure, because it's like the more as days goes on, the more this is going to look bad that I'm been hiding this for 2 years. I mean, can you imagine, like, for our parents that are listening out there, like, can you imagine your child hiding something for 2 years? That's like fucked up. You know what I mean? Like that I can't imagine the just like how much that would hurt you and like surprise you and shock you and make you angry. Like you would have such a like plethora of emotions, that it just like I can't imagine that. But at the same time, obviously me being in that perspective and like having that experience, like there was a reason why it took 2 years. You know, as Ryan was saying, we were literally building our relationship to what it is now. Because we knew there was going to be a hell of a storm coming, once we finally feel ready to go out. So, and like tell my family. So it really did help that I didn't feel pressure from Ryan at all. Like if anything, Ryan probably would have wanted to wait even longer, because it's just very nerve wracking, like because he's going to have to start talking to family members. And Ryan's like a nervous guy, like when he meets people or when he's like put under pressure like that.
I'm not nervous. I just have a lot of like social anxiety, even though I'm a very talkative person. I just
When you get to know him.
and then I'm a very cautious person too.
Yeah.
And then I always think on the extreme of like, oh, I think of every bad scenario that could ever happen. So like I'm the type of person who, if I'm going on a roller coaster, it's like, oh well, when the bolts could come loose, you never know.
No, okay.
Could be flying off, you don't know. But
And you're also like, I won't believe it until I see it type of person.
yeah. For me, I never really got excited for it. It was just like, okay, like, is it like, where am I? Am I sitting in front of them? If I'm not, it's not happening yet.
Or you're not even going to think about it.
Yeah. So I. It's
Whereas
gotta
me,
be,
I was like thinking about it all the time.
yeah. So for me, it's got to be happening, and plus that's easier to be when you're outside of that circle for those 2 years. So again, it's you know, if you're on the side where you're not in that culture and you're not a part of that culture, or you are a part of that culture, but let's just say there's some bad history, you are gonna be that one in the relationship who has to kind of be the punching bag to take everything from Amirna or from whoever that person might be that has to finally tell their parents, because you're going to be the one absorbing everything that's being put down on them, and they're going to have to put it on you.
Yeah. He definitely was like that, because there was times where even though my family again didn't know for 2 years, like there was times I mean, I'm not going to lie, I had doubts, like, which we'll talk more so when we talk about our engagement, because that was like a hot mess. But there was times where I had doubts and stuff, and there were things that I would take out on Ryan, because like he was the only one there. Of course we had our friends, and of course we had family and stuff, but it's like they are not here in the relationship like me and him. Like if I can't go to Ryan when I'm feeling doubtful or upset or sad or whatever in regards to like my family, then this is going to be a problem. I need to confide in him. I need to, I need to be able to know that I can confide in him, So like I said, it really did help that I didn't get any pressure from him. I didn't get any pressure from his family. I mean, like, again, with the doubts that his family had, rightfully so, because again, that's their son and slash brother, like, it's not like they were telling me, like, I've never, ever, ever, ever got the question from his mom or his sister, when are you going to tell your family? Why aren't you telling your family yet? Like, never, never did they put that pressure on me, because even though they didn't agree with it, they understood, like they understood that this is not something that I can just do, and like, again, I guess like, since this is like 2 years into our relationship and we are getting closer, we are more in love with each other, we are like, okay, this is definitely what we're going to do and we have to prepare. Like now we're at this point where it's like, yes, this is the one, like this is the one for me. I definitely see like an engagement, a marriage, a future, all of this stuff. Like his family, I can't even imagine like being the mother to Ryan. Okay, this wonderful son that you have raised, okay, and a complete stranger doesn't like him because of the color of his skin, or the potential of knowing that, because again, my family didn't know at this point, but like with the way Ryan is as a person, if anyone has met him or knows him, knows that he is just like one of a kind, like not I can't explain him better than that, and I don't want to keep complimenting him because I don't want his head to get big, but he is literally one of a kind. So you don't meet a lot of Ryans like him. So, and that all comes from his mother, so his mother, who has raised this wonderful person, to know that there are people who will not like him because of the color of his skin is devastating and heartbreaking and quite like hard to accept. And the fact that she accepted that and did not talk to me about it at all for the 2 years, like she's never mentioned that to me. It was probably after our engagement that she like mentioned that, like, and that was actually one of the reasonings that I used when I finally told my family. I was like, you guys are sitting here hating on Ryan. What do you think his mom is thinking? Like, you're not even thinking about their side, his side, and like how you guys look to them. Like you're not even thinking about like, wow, this is messed up that we're treating her son like this. Like that. And it's crazy because that's what Chaldeans like. We're so like, I don't want to speak for all Chaldeans. I shouldn't speak for all Chaldeans, but majority, my family, I would say, my family in particular, and maybe, some Chaldeans out there can relate. We're so stuck in this little bubble that Chaldeans are the best. Anyone who dates a Chaldean, like, especially our Chaldean women who don't have bad reputations, like you are getting gold, so I mean, think about it. Like we, try to make sure that we match good Chaldean family with another good Chaldean family. This is a great marriage. This is a good match or whatever, so it's like they are so like my parents in particular were so stuck in like that little bubble of like thinking, like about how this looks into the community that they didn't even think about like Ryan's family and what that looks like, like to them, how you won't accept their son based off of his skin color. So, I mean, it just, again, and now like obviously now like it's a lot different, like, and of course we're going to go into that as episodes go on, but this was what we were facing at that time, because we're trying to paint this picture for you guys as best as we can using our voices and our words and things like that. But that in those 2 years, that's essentially what it was like. And we did get like I mean, I would hear stereotypes again all the time, you know, like just about not even just dating a black guy, like dating a white person, you know, like we talked about my cousin Peggy in the last podcast. Like she at the time was engaged to her husband now, to her husband who's white. And guys, like this guy, I mean, how would you explain Tim, Ryan?
Tim's a Swiss Army knife.
He's a, what does that mean?
He can do it all. Like he's like Bob the Builder.
Math whiz, genius.
He can be Bob the Builder. He can be your accountant. And then what else does he do?
He can run your business.
He can run your business. He could probably turn you into like a soccer star.
Yeah, oh yeah,
because he played soccer.
Yep, he could
almost professionally, right? Or
I
was this
think
like
so.
a semi-pro?
No, I think his sister went pro.
Okay,
if I'm not mistaken.
Again,
but regardless,
he's in that like less than 1% of people who can go on to play college soccer, and then go on beyond that. So he's in that small percentage of people who can do that. But he can he's definitely a Swiss Army knife of a person.
I love that. I hope he's listening. But you know, so this guy, like him and my cousin started dating and they got engaged, and it's like the way they got engaged was not like was so just out of this world, you know, like so to just kind of like back up and trust me, this tangent has a reason. Because it's going to talk about like how different biases are amongst Chaldeans and other races. So she starts dating this guy, and they're probably like 6 months into dating or something like that. He lives in Chicago. My cousin lives in Michigan. And my cousin just keeps going back and forth every weekend to Chicago. It was every weekend she would go to Chicago to, you know, hang out with him and stuff. So he finally came over in Michigan to have the family meet him. And it was like a gathering of some sort. And my dad was like, you know, like people, family members and stuff were like to my aunt, which is my cousin's mom. Oh, is this her fiance? Like, who is this? And my aunt was like, yeah, this is her fiance. Yes, in Arabic. So my cousin's like to Tim, well, I guess we're engaged, you know, like because it looks so bad, you know, like to like bring a guy home if you're not engaged to him. And not only that, but like Tim is not as much as Tim is like this good looking guy, he does not dress up like the way Chaldeans dress up. He is like, he probably has like holes in his shorts. And again, like he's like, if you see this guy's picture, like he's a very good looking guy, but like he
literally, he literally looks like the white version of Jay-Z.
No, don't say that. Don't say that.
Same. And I'm gonna go.
I'll put a picture in my story, like when this podcast airs, so you guys can see what we're talking about. But
same features, or even Jay-Z, or like a Troy Aikman. If you guys watch.
Is that the reporter?
So yeah. So if you guys ever watch The Lions on Fox, he is one of the commentators. His name is Troy Aikman. You can look him up. He played football for the Dallas Cowboys too, but. Look at a picture of Troy Aikman, Jay-Z, and then look at Tim. They could be triplets.
Anyway, he's probably pissed off that you said that. Because Jay-Z's not like the best looking black dude. But anyway, so, you know, to each their own. Anyway, so, you know, well, I'll like I said, I'll put a picture of him in stories. So, but, you know, like he's a good looking white dude, you know, very, very respectful, but quiet. Like, does not say a word. And in our culture, like if someone is quiet, we call them a booma, which is an owl, you know, basically like not the life of the party. Like they're just very shy. They're very, you know, whatever, like they just don't talk. Like, it's like, what do you do with that person? You know, because Chaldeans don't understand like social anxiety, you know, they're just like constantly like in your face, obnoxious, loud, whatever, you know, that's who we are. Right. Nothing bad about it. It's just sometimes it doesn't translate to other cultures as something, you know, that can be related to. But anyway, so, you know, he's like, at this gathering and stuff, and like no one really knows him, so I guess they were just like engaged. And my cousin did tell me about a time where she was at this gathering or a wedding. I don't know. We couldn't like really figure it out, but she was talking to someone that she knew who's a Chaldean guy, someone that she knew and like hasn't seen in a long time. So they were like catching up and stuff, and the guy was like, oh, like, how are you doing, and blah blah blah. And this time she was actually engaged. Like not just like announced their engagement out of nowhere, like that, like how my aunt did. But he she told him like, yeah, I'm engaged. And he's like, oh, to who? And she's like, oh, you wouldn't know him, he's from Chicago. And he's like, oh, like, is it a Chaldean guy? And she's like, no, it's a white guy. And he like straight up told her like, why marry a white guy if Chaldeans can take care of you better? Or like that white guys, like how white guys don't take care of their women, they're lazy, they don't have any morals or ethics. Even though Tim, I think, went to a Catholic school like up until high school or something. Like his whole family's Catholic. They're very conservative, like they're not like they definitely have morals and values, Tim is like on the lax like side, but he's like, he definitely has morals and values. He's definitely not lazy. Like this guy was just going off on this white guy that my cousin is engaged to, and he's never even met the guy. So my cousin just like flat out said, like, you can say the same thing about Chaldeans, that they beat and cheat on their wives, and that he's more of a man than he'll ever be, because the guy like flat out said like, white people aren't men, like white men aren't real men. Which, it's just like, again, not all Chaldeans beat and cheat on their wives, but it's just like, we have to think about this. This was 2010, I think, when she got engaged to him. So about 11 years ago. It's still like Chaldeans are dating white guys. Some Chaldeans are like, marrying them and stuff, but it's still like, it's getting there, but it's not like fully accepted. I feel like within our culture, like some white people or American people are acceptable. Like, for instance, like if we said that as far as dating outside of our culture, it was always okay to marry an Italian guy, because Italians are just like Chaldeans. Certain European ethnicities, like it was okay to like marry, but like white people, no. Black people, definitely no. Mexican, no. You know what I mean? Like there's just a bunch of no's, but like certain European ethnicities were okay because they were just like us. We could like relate to them. So, it's just like, it's crazy to think that like people just like would have this bias and not even know the people, which essentially was what I went through when I first like told my parents, which, again, we're going to get into future episodes, but like, it's just crazy to think that it's definitely understandable, because when we're talking about culture and preserving culture, like, yes, there is like some things about preserving culture that it's going to be even more difficult if you're dating outside of your culture. Like, I'll be honest, Ryan knows a few Arabic words, but not enough to make me happy. I want him to know the whole Arabic language. But then if you speak to a Chaldean person who's like very Chaldean, knows the Chaldean language and all that stuff, they'll, like my dad, for instance, it says you shouldn't be learning Arabic. You should teach him Chaldean. And it's like, bro, I don't even know Chaldean. Like you didn't even teach me Chaldean. I had to like learn in school. And when I was learning in school, it was like all the bad words, so, but I speak Arabic fluently, and Arabic is a like a global language, whereas Chaldean is just amongst Chaldeans, I would love for him to know both, but it's just like, there's so many things that I would have to teach him just in regards to like that. So, it just, I guess where I'm trying to go at is like, it's, you get these stares, you get these looks, you get these comments, you get these ignorant remarks. And I was at that time always defensive, because again, I had to prepare for what was coming. Whereas Ryan is more of the thinker, like let me think before I respond.
And plus, you're, I think patience has to be a big thing too, because
Yeah, I'm not
again,
patient.
like Marina said, you can't put on pressure if you really love this person, because I would say timing is everything, but it's one of those things where you're never prepared mentally for what's going to be said and what's going to be done in response to you saying, I'm dating someone who's not of this culture, not of the part of the region where we're from, anything of that. So there's gonna be backlash. There's gonna be people that are gonna say some things that later on will be back will be in the back of your head, but they're smiling and laughing with you later on. But at the end of the day, you can't let you know like I'm sure Peggy didn't let that one incident with that one Chaldean guy paint her picture for all Chaldean guys. I'm sure, for me, I don't let the stares from a handful of black women out in public paint pictures for me for black women either. So we can't let these types of, you know, microaggressions kind of paint the picture for
the general, like as the general stereotype. But
yeah,
I have to respectfully disagree. I did look at Chaldean men like that.
Well,
I can't speak for Peggy, but like, if in my instance, like I really was just like all Chaldean men are like this because, and again, I can say this now because I understand it more as time has passed. Like, I was looking at Chaldean men the same way Chaldeans look at black people. It's just like you see an image on TV about black people and you assume all black people are like that black person that's on the TV, the one who's robbing your store or the one who robbed and killed another Chaldean man. Or they're drug dealing or they're this. And I was looking at Chaldean men like they beat their wives and they cheat on them, or they, like they just are liars or they go into marriage because they want they want a second mom or something because they're such like mama's boys. Again, these are all stereotypes that are wrong. Like it might be one Chaldean person who can fit like each of those stereotypes or one of those stereotypes, but it can't, revolve around all people. And that's why I'm loving like my generation and the generation under me, Generation Z or whatever, because I feel like a lot of those people are like breaking those molds because again, like I said, I've had Chaldean men reach out to me and say like, I'm so glad that you're doing this. Like, I was kind of raised in the same way of like, I don't care who I date and things like that. And it's just like really nice to see my mind. Like, it's really nice to be proven wrong. Let's just put it that way. In that sense, everything else I need to be
sure.
right
For sure.
because I love being right. But, for the most part, like, I love being wrong about those perceptions. And I think, I'm so excited when we talk about future episodes of when my family does find out, when we talk about that, how it just was like, Ryan was just breaking every stereotype. Like, Ryan was just like... I'm complimenting you way too much in this episode. I need to stop. But it's just like it's again all of these like biases against black people and just like dating outside of your culture in general. Like in my experience, and I would say in my cousins, like we were just looked at like, and I'm talking about when my family actually knew, not in this 2-year radius. But like when my family actually knew and just like getting all these like people like ask these like ignorant ass questions like that are just seriously formed from only stereotypes, like things that they hear other people say or like they see one black person or one Chaldean person like this and this is how we now look at Chaldean and black people and things like that. So trying to think what else about like do I want to talk like about biases and stuff, but I think that just kind of covers most of it. And again, dating within the culture without and versus outside of the culture, like those differences and stuff. I think we covered enough of that.
Yeah, yeah, and we glossed over some things when it comes to keeping it a secret. Like some examples are every most nights of the week we would try to fall asleep on the phone and talk to each other before we went to sleep.
Yeah.
So and again, uh, Myrna lived in the very top floor of her house. So like
I lived in a condo. There's an upstairs, and in the upstairs, it's only my room.
yeah,
Like there's no
so
hallway. There's no nothing. It's just my room.
so even with that, we're having a talk super like she's whispering
Yeah.
some nights. She's throwing her phone under her cover when her mom comes in the door to ask her a question. Like that was every day. She had to do
Yeah.
that. So
Dang, I forgot about that.
yeah, I don't. I don't forget about those because it's all from that journey of like, Myrna had to do everything imaginable to keep it a secret, and if she was caught slacking once, who knows what could have happened early on, a year into it when we weren't ready, or before we met. I met her brother, or before I met her cousin. Who knows where we would be.
Yeah.
Um, I
Like
don't
of
think.
course I had to like tell. So like if I said to my mom, I'm going over Rita's house. Like I was texting Rita, "Hey, I'm at your house." She'd be like,
Yeah.
"Okay,"
Yeah,
like Sarah, same thing. Like a bunch of other friends and stuff. Like I was like texting them, like, "Hey, if my mom calls, hey, if this happens, blah 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 blah." I was at your house. I mean, it was.
yeah,
There
can't.
was times where it was very close,
Yeah,
but luckily, like when my mom called, I was hanging out like for instance, like if I told my mom I was hanging out with Rita, but really I was hanging out with like Rita, Christian, Ryan, and we were just like going out on a date and stuff. There was like a couple times where my mom would call and like thank God she would call on those days, where we were double dating so that way if she did want to talk to Rita, like Rita was actually there. So it's not like I have to like quickly like, "Oh wait, mom, you're breaking up," and then put Rita on like a three-way or something.
yeah. So
You know.
and she had to get her story straight every time. There's no sister that's with her. There's no little brother that she can cash
Confided.
in on
Yeah.
other things. So it was just her, and she had to do that every week for 2 years, almost.
Every day for 2 years.
Well, not every day because we didn't see each other every single day.
We saw each other like 4 times a week, 3, 4 times a week because I was working in Detroit at the time. And,
Yeah, true.
so like where he was staying at was like a good, like good 20 minutes away. So, like I would like leave work and go to his house and stay there till like 9 o'clock and drive home.
Yeah.
And I would always like tell my mom I'm at Rita's, I'm at Sarah's, or I'm this or I'm that. So like it was even after like I guess we only touched on like when I was in school. So now that I have this career that I'm in, I had to like my lies had to be like more believable because it's like why am I hanging out with Rita 4 times a week? So I had to like switch it up. It's like, okay, I'm hanging out with Sarah this time, or I'm hanging out with this person or that person, So it's like,
Yeah.
it helped that my mom didn't know them because it's like I was at the age where, my mom doesn't have to like meet my friends to feel safe,
And I think it helps that your mom isn't as Americanized as well. Um,
As far as
there's
like technology goes, is that what you're talking about?
technology.
Yeah.
Uh, technology. I think plus she isn't like a stay-at-home wife. She's working
Yeah, my mom works
10-hour
a lot.
shifts
Yeah.
almost every single day, even on the weekends. So it's not like she has the time to just sit up and wonder where Myrna is. Like some moms might have the opportunity to.
Well, no,
So
the second she walks in the house, she's wondering because she
well,
was
yeah.
calling me multiple
Well,
times.
that's that. But I'm just saying, like, your mom's not
general.
sitting up chilling,
Yeah.
watching TV on Saturday, talking about where's Myrna and looking for where your location is. So there's so many factors that went into how we kept it a secret as well, not just Myrna's ability to lie for
Yeah,
2 years.
that's
So
true.
there's so many little things that go into it too of you know
and again, right, and sorry to cut you off, but like my parents are divorced, so my dad is like 10 minutes away from where I live with my mom, and I see him every week. So it's like I think if my dad lived with me, that would be a lot harder.
I
A
mean,
lot harder.
yeah, like I think about that all the time. I kind of always think of if if Marina's parents were still together, would this have even been a possibility?
Probably not.
And I just sit there and I think it's for for the people listening whose like families are still intact and who kind of are more Americanized. It's going to be 10 times harder to do every little thing that you can to stay with somebody because and I
You
think
mean for the families who are not Americanized?
no, who are like if your mom and dad are going out speaking perfect English and do all this stuff and don't work 10-hour shifts at this place or this place and this place and have days off and take vacations. I think your timetable to figure out if Ryan is the fit for you, it gets moved up a hell of a lot sooner too.
Oh,
You don't
yeah. Yeah, that's like more of a good thing, obviously. I thought you were talking
No.
about it in a bad way. Sorry, I
No,
was
this is
misunderstanding.
bad. You're misunderstanding still. This is bad. Like you don't have the time to really vet and to get through and to chill and to really see if Ryan's the right fit for you. And
Well, I
to-
would think if they're more Americanized, then they would be more accepting.
not. I don't mean Americanized in culture. I just mean like they've done the cult switch. They can be white when they need to be white, and then when they come home, it's back to being who I am. But like
I see what you're saying.
you get
Yeah.
like if your mom was as Americanized as your dad,
So, okay.
do you get what I'm trying to say?
I get what you're trying to say, but let me explain for
Okay,
our
go ahead.
listeners. So, my dad is like I think
think
what
a
you're
better
trying to say
word
is like
would
more
even
educated.
be educated.
Yes, because
unfortunately, is what I'm trying
unfortunately,
to say.
because right. So, not to put my mom's business out there, but this is like essentially like every Middle Eastern most of the Middle Eastern women who came from Iraq. My mom didn't finish high school. I think she went up to the 11th grade, got married at 19 to my dad, who was 23, I believe. And whereas my dad, he has his degree in statistics and accounting, I think, from back home. And, was forced to go into the war under Saddam Hussein. So he was in the war for like, I think 11 years. But so like their first 7 years of marriage, they probably only seen each other like a total of like 5 months, cause it just was like, they just couldn't. So anyway, they, found a way to come to America. That's like a long story in and of itself. So I'm not going to get in there, but my mom didn't really have like the opportunities that my dad had. And that's based off of living in Iraq and how women are just like essentially expected to, just marry, but like marry and have kids and that's it. Whereas like the men are like the providers and, they have like more opportunities to go study. Not to say that women in Iraq couldn't study at the time, but it just wasn't like as, like put on them as much as men are. So my dad's more educated versus my mom, but my mom has more experiences outside of Chaldean culture because majority of her friends, like she has best friends who are, yes, Chaldean, but like some of them are Jordanian. She works in a place that's highly diverse. I mean, it's an Italian market, like of course, like most of the workers are Italian, but you got people from Ecuador, you got people from El Salvador, you got people from Mexico, from Yugoslavia, from Albania. She talks to everybody versus my dad, who mostly talks to Chaldeans. Like most of his friends are Chaldeans and things like that. So I guess like what Ryan's saying as far as like more Americanized, like as being more educated, meaning like not like, oh, you're dumb. It's like, like maybe you are invested in a business or you invested in a business, but like you still have time to like take time off or you make your own hours. So like you could be home at a certain time or you're in a company, you work for a company and you have time off and you could take vacations and things like that. So I guess that's what you're going
Yeah,
at, right?
it's such a hard thing to put into words,
Yeah,
you
it is
know?
very difficult
But
because, yeah,
just what I'm trying to say is it's just like just imagine just being white or black and your parents are who your parents are and but they can pick up on all of your little lies like, oh, you're hanging out with Rita for the fourth time today at her house.
yeah, because I can't imagine doing all this stuff with location services and stuff like that
Yeah.
from Apple. Like, and if my mom knew how to work a phone
Oh
and all
yeah,
that stuff,
that's
like
why
this
it's
would
done
not,
right there.
yeah.
Because
Or
like,
my dad,
yeah.
like, that's another thing is like, I wanted to bring up when Ryan brought that up. Like, if my parents were still together, I do realize that again, I'm like a, outlier in the community, Chaldean community, because again, it's like, not most, maybe now it's a little different. A lot of Chaldeans are getting a divorce now, but back then my parents were like one of the, outliers of like Chaldeans who got a divorce. Like it just was unheard of, and especially like with my parents, like a lot of people were shocked, that they were getting a divorce. But anyway, like the point that I'm trying to make is that I think if my parents were still together, I would have been raised in a very traditional Chaldean way. I think I would have still probably went to school in Sterling Heights. So I probably would have went to Sterling Heights High School, which is very Chaldean.
because they got divorced when you were how old?
10 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind too. Mariner was still
I was still growing,
still a growing, still like a child, like a very young child.
Yeah.
So it's not like this is 16, 15 where her ideals were kind of already set. So she had this growing, I guess, like a tree. Like she went a complete
different
direction.
Like my roots were like, yeah, we got some right here, but we're gonna plant roots in other places too.
Yeah,
so I think I was like essentially destined to be. I mean, obviously, I was destined to be who I am now because I am who I am now. But there was something that as we close out this episode, there was something that I realized from the previous episode that I brought up to Ryan was that, my family came to America to have more opportunity for us. They risked their lives to come here to a foreign country, okay? Because, for our American listeners out there, U.S. is a foreign country, okay, to foreigners, all right? So to come to a foreign country where you don't know nothing, you don't know the language, you don't know nothing, you just hear your news about this foreign country is just what you hear from other people or from media or things like that. So you're looking at America like it's the dream. It is literally the dream, or a lottery even. And if you come to America, you won the lottery, So my family risking that to give us a better future for me and my brother, but they still had this expectation that they have this fear of that I'm going to be, or me and my brother, that we're going to be away from the culture or away from our home country. Because my brother wasn't born here either, as Americanized as he is. He was born in Iraq, okay? He was born in Iraq. I was born in Italy. And I feel like, I should have been the one born in Iraq because I'm more Chaldean and I care more about like the Chaldean culture than, he does. But it's just like, my family had this like, which is going to make sense in future episodes, like why I'm talking about this, but like my family had more of this expectation that I would still be raised very traditional Chaldean, very traditional. And as much as they tried to raise me traditionally, I just was not traditional. So like they expect me to marry a Chaldean, and then I end up marrying a black guy. And then I thought about it when we were talking about our last episode. Ryan, when he was talking about how his family was like, some family members, expect him to date black girls. His mom moves him to Livonia because better opportunity, better future for her kids, things like that. Like she moves them from East Lansing to Livonia and, again, for better opportunity, better education, things like that. And, family expects him to date a black girl, but in Livonia, it's predominantly white. So it's like, it's crazy how like these two people from across different cultures, different cities, like cities from like one side and the other on the complete other side, we, you know, don't like we end up having the same like cultural phenomenon of like we're both expected to date within our culture and we don't end up doing that. So you know, I just thought that was like pretty cool. I thought that was like crazy to think about. That was like one of those realizations that just kind of hit me different. Like I was just like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's like one of those high thoughts. Like,
Yeah.
like the one thing I love thinking about sometimes is like, and this would be like to
Not saying that we were high at the time.
yeah, but this is
Okay.
kind of just to wrap up the episode today, 'cause I know it's a long one. Literally, every decision you've made, every word you've said, everything you've watched has led to this moment. Like every bad decision, every cringy a decision, every good decision that you've made
Every small decision.
has led to this moment. Just think about that, and we'll get back to you next week.
Yeah. I think so. Next week is, I think, the actual episode where we actually get into telling my family. So fun. I mean, you guys, again, if you have your questions, please comment on my post. Or Ryan doesn't really post. He's not really on social media as much as I am. So you can post comments, questions, things like that under my Instagram stories or my Instagram post. If you if you share our podcast on your stories, please make sure to tag me. Like, as far as YouTube goes, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you guys listening with us and, you know, just being very, 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 just encouraging. Appreciate it. All right. We'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.